All right. Happy Thursday. Let me know if the audio and the videos are doing okay. I've got lots of lights and bleeps and bloops. Seem to be telling me that I should be live and A-okay, but as you never can tell, let me know if that's not working for you today. I think I don't have any particular programming notes other than I'm doing this stream today, which I usually do tomorrow, because tomorrow I will be at PAX East. Also on Saturday in PAX East, get myself around there. I'm not sure if anything will come of it in terms of content. We'll see. I probably will ill-advisedly pick up some games or something. I know that PAX East, I feel like the focus is more on board games, or not board games, sorry, video games. And I like video games. I haven't picked up the latest Xbox or PlayStation yet. I've been enjoying family time with the Switch currently, but I'll definitely check those out. But in terms of tabletop stuff, I know there will be people there. We'll see what comes out of it. Ian says, so I guess we're getting new Spelljammer and Dragonlance adventures. Is this from Wizards? I had not heard. Do tell, Ian, what news do you have to share that hasn't percolated to me yet? And while you're doing that, hey, Tonga Todd, Team Todd is indeed in the house. Let me get my window with the OSR Reddit, subreddit, I should say. I always say Reddit. I feel like, I guess technically it's subreddit. You don't say the OSR Reddit. There we go. Switch myself around. As usual, I have not looked at this for the last few days to keep everything nice and fresh. But if you see red marks already, it just means that it must have hit the hot tab and I'd already tackled it in some way. Let's just see what we've got here. Let's see, we got a map, we got a work in progress dungeon crawl. Ian says, officially announced today, Spelljammer 3-book slipcase with an adventure this summer and an unnamed Dragonlance adventure late this year. Okay, interesting. I was never a huge Dragonlance fan. I read the first 3 books. They were fine, super easy reading. It was cool. Look, Raceland was cool. I thought Raceland was cool back in the day. I didn't love Kenders as much as some people went just all out on Kenders. I've gone super corporate today with Diet Coke for the working man. But with the adventure aspect of it, I was never interested in them. They never did anything for me. And I think also by this time I was sort of exiting the D&D scene for a while. I think I was getting more into playing just the group. The people who I played that with were just not there anymore, and I was getting into. I think I was overseas at that time, and I was getting into doing Marvel and my first forays with Shadowrun. So at the time when maybe I would have been interested in playing Dragonlance, maybe I wasn't around for it. I forget, but it was kind of in that period towards the end of first edition. I hadn't come back to school to come back for college yet, and by the time I came back for college, we were into second edition and we were playing homebrew stuff, so we weren't playing Dragonlance anyway. And anytime I think about I think I remember seeing them around even before they became vintage things, and it just was always kind of I don't need to play it. Spelljammer I had the box set for originally. I'm hoping maybe this will drive down the prices on the secondary market because it's one of those things I've tried to get back, and I haven't found the right price that I want to pay for it yet. I never really played it much, and I think I talked about this with Lissa Faden because she played a Spelljammer game. It wasn't by the book Spelljammer, but I think it was a 5th edition kind of Spelljammer sort of hack. And the Spelljammer, the setting seemed really cool, but all there's the mechanics of what they were trying to do. I felt like was maybe the worst aspects of the let's just crunchify everything out. Like I've said many times, I think with modern, if there were some easy ways to do this stuff in Roll20 and get it automated behind the scenes, it'd probably be great. But I'd be curious to see what a 5th edition Spelljammer would look like. Don't care about Dragonlance, but I'm sure there are lots of people who do. So all good for them. All right, let me see here. A Baroque science fantasy god appearance generator. Well, that sounds just up our alley, I would think. Let's see, let me give them an upvote. Let's go here for, there's only one comment. Posted, and I will post this into the chat as well. From the Lizardman Diaries, Baroque Science Fantasy God Generator. This is part 1. All right, so we may have to come in future weeks. We might get the second parts, second and beyond parts, but right now, there we go. And let me highlight that. So if you want to play along at home, there it is. Baroque Science Fantasy God Generator, Part 1, Appearance. You have encountered a god? What do they look like? Roll below. Then there's some links to some related content that we may like. And we will get an automated version of the tables. Always nice. So for color, British color, we're going to roll twice and then combine them. And I'm not going to read all these, but we have, your Crayola Advanced collection of gold through 40. Well, how are you getting 1 to 40? I feel like it should have just gone up to 100, though I do like pus yellow green. Pus yellow green. A pale brown. A pale brown. All right, 40. Another odd die size, but presuming we're using electronic dice rollers, not a big deal. Form base. Roll twice and combine. Stuff from androgynous human body, a pair of wings, all the way down to a fanged maw, a twisted column of roots. Also a 40. What is with the 40-sided die here? A drop or downpour of blood, a bone, skeleton, or skull. And then form warpage. I don't know what, I guess they mean warpage, as in how the body is warped, or it's just maybe that's I don't know if I'd like that term. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Warpage, how the body's been warped, how it's different, maybe an unusual feature. It could be glowing softly, it could be harshly, acutely angular, it could be shining blindingly, and we get another, I'm going to guess 40 choices. Haha. All right, I don't understand the 40 part, but we can, these weird, I don't know, like, I don't want to, this was posted by Michael Raston, and I think it's good work. I'm not sure. I've seen this in a few different, when they put these kind of, here, I've automated the generator and thrown it at the bottom of the blog. Why they do it in this form where I have to click multiple, or I'm assuming, maybe I don't. Why do I have to click all this? Just, I know I have to click all of them to get to the end of it. So why not just make one button that just gives me the entire clicker instead of having me click, in this case, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I'm not sure. I've seen it before. I don't really know. Maybe there's an explanation in terms of how Blogger works with these kinds of codes. I don't know. But how about a one button clicker? But hey, I've done a bunch of JavaScript in my past, and perhaps they haven't, so it might be easier for me to say than for them to do. In any case, we have an example here of an automated Baroque Science Fantasy God appearance generator, generated content. We have a god whose form is bronze. I think we're supposed to do 2. Is that? Oh, wait a minute. Hold on, let me just click another one. All right, the god's form is a bronze pair of wings and a glistening green, perfectly cut gem that is made of endless teeth and flesh, consuming itself, and is harshly, acutely angular. I see. I think so. Okay, so we don't. I thought we were combining the colors for one part, but where's this one first color is there, second color is here. I don't think that was necessarily made clear in the text, but that's why it's great to have an example, or in this case, a generator. MaxCan7 likes this one quite a bit. Well, great job. I can't wait to kind of see more of it. Let's do one more here. Glistening red. This god's form is a glistening red cloud of tiny spheres and a wine red twisting column of roots that is exploding with hypnotically writhing feathers or leaves. Well, we could go with leaves if we want to keep the plant-like nature, though roots covered in feathers. It's kind of cool too. Let's see, Tonka Todd. I'm guessing this is referring back to, well, actually, hold on a minute. save your thought, Tonka Todd. Let me just put a pin in this. All right, so that was Lizardman Diaries. Well done, Michael Raston over at the Lizard. This was Automated Baroque Science Fantasy God Appearance Generator by Michael Raston over at the Lizardman Diaries. Well done. I'm going to close this back out. I believe I did give it a thumbs up. We shall go back. Okay. Now the Tonka Todd. I'm talking about. I thought this was about Spelljammer. So you're talking about Dragonlance. You played in one published adventure and one homebrew campaign. The published was not fun, no fun, very railroady, but the world was fun in the homebrew. Yeah, I think that's what. I mean, that's one of the things that people look at. I think Ravenloft preceded Dragonlance in terms of the adventures, and I think Ravenloft and then Dragonlance was really promoting a very linear campaign design. When I went through and did Ravenloft, I redid it for the channel, I think a couple of years ago now. I was a little bit surprised at basically how linear it is. You come in on one side of I forget that Barovia, and you have a path that takes you through the village. You can't really get off the path too much because everything in the fog is going to kill you. Said you running, so you kind of get pushed into the village, and you kind of go through the village. You get on the road, and sure, you can mess around the village more or less, depending. Then you get into the castle, and then basically I believe the gates shut in the castle, so then you're just there until you either deal with Strahd or get dealt with by Strahd, and then once that's over, you're spit out the other side. It's pretty linear, right? And then I think Dragonlance takes it even further because you're supposed to be playing the characters from those stories, which means that a lot of things are fixed, right? You can't have some of these characters that are going to be in later stories and in later adventures dying, so it leaves you in a real space where you're really kind of railroading the stories, very linear. It's not someone I feel like it's their fault. It's whatever Hickman, Tracy Hickman or whatever. It's their fault. I think often that the games, we rail a lot of times on what these game companies put out there. Oh, I can't believe they're doing that. I can't believe they're doing this. But I think the bottom line is a lot of times they're looking at what the marketplace is telling them. They're looking at what players and game tables and leagues and game stores are all telling them what they want. And I think we went from at the very beginning here basically nothing, right? Here's the white box and just this massively open blank page. Build what you want, put whatever house rules you want in there. Then they spend a few years and people start to figure out like, okay, well, maybe there's a neat setting. Let me put it out there. Judges Guild and things like that, saying, okay, let's make some kind of settings. Let's give some people a place to play, and people realizing, yeah, I'd like a place to play. I don't want to do all that work myself. I don't want to go buy Outdoor Survival. I don't own Outdoor Survival. At some point, Outdoor Survival might even become hard to get a hold of, and even that doesn't give you much. Just gives you a kind of a weird blank map. So let's make settings and things. And then, you go into conventions, start off. Oh, okay, we need stuff to run at conventions. Well, we can't just have you start off in this sandbox, so we need to have something that is necessarily linear. Okay, there's modules, and then modules, and that can. But I think a lot of this is them. Sure, game companies are kind of putting stuff out, but then they're looking at what we want and trying to feed us what we want. And I think you see that in terms of things like why did we change from gold for XP to killing for XP? Because lots of players liked killing stuff, and they looked at it and said, "This is what players love to do. Let's reward them for what they're doing." So then we get to XP for killing stuff, and XP for gold fades away. Why did the modules get more linear? I'm sure some of it was some individuals who had these ideas, but I think it was also reading the tea leaves of people kind of want that, or there's at least a segment of people who are happy to run through an adventure that can have all these intricacies and be kind of everything. But there's a cost to that, which is you end up with linear adventures. And now I think we're in, I don't want to say it's swinging back. Certainly OSR has pulled people away that are sort of tired. You're huddled and tired masses who maybe didn't want very super structured adventures, but we still see in adventure paths. We still see in kind of campaign books the 5th edition puts out that there's still a lot of demand for, and depending on the adventure book and adventure path, more or less, at least somewhat linear adventures. Maybe they're doing a better job, depending on the adventure, building in choice and being more open-ended, but at the end of the day, they are kind of linear. You're moving from, chapter to chapter, point to point, down the page. I don't know. What do I know? I know nothing. Let's see what else we have here. All right, Goodman Games is something coming out, or in this case, Good Man Games. All right, someone made something called Thieves. Give them an upvote. Let's check out Thieves. Okay. All right, so they don't have any community copies, and they don't have anything to preview, so sorry. Hey, one nice thing is, and I will link to this page here. See, who posted this? Does it say? Where's the name of the author? Angelo Laviola. I'm going to grab a freebie version so I can share it here, but hopefully some folks will like this. This is Thieves by Angelo Laviola. So hopefully, if you see this and you like how it plays, you'll plunk down some coinage, show some appreciation. I can't do it right now, but it is an image. Oh, you know what? Hold on, cancel. They have it in English in the PDF. That's what I want. All right, so here we go. Thieves by Angelo Laviola. Thieves is a high-risk, high-reward role-playing game where a group of, you guessed it, thieves assault a place to accomplish their objectives. There are 3 stats. Physical, which is normally used to climb, swim, jump, move in shadows, and even take out guards. Mental, to hear through walls, investigate documents, and convincing guards that you are one of them. And luck, when no other stat is applicable, and to try not to get caught when you mess it up. 3 stats, physical, mental, and luck. And I guess you do yourself. You have a 4, 3, and a 2, and you spread them out so you can pick which one you want to be strong, which one you want to be medium, and which one you want to be poor. I'm going to guess that this is a 6-sided. We're using 6-sided dice in this game. We will see. I don't think it's said yet. Rolls. When you attempt a risky action, choose an appropriate stat and roll a d6. If the result is equal or less to that, or less than, oh, there's a typo, less than your stat, you succeeded. If you roll greater than your stat, you fail, and need to check the danger level rules. Then there's a clean example. Strength is 3, you're going to roll a die. If you roll a 3, you succeed. If you roll a 4, you fail. When you fail something, there is a danger level. When you fail a roll, you have to do the next steps. First, you're going to raise the danger level by 1 to a max of 6. Second, you're going to compare your failed roll with the danger level. Third, if your failed roll is greater than the danger level, you continue playing, but if it is equal to or less than the danger level, you do a luck roll. If you succeed on the luck roll, you can continue playing, but if you don't, the entire party is captured, killed, enslaved, or needs to flee. Game over. How to decrease the danger level? The only way to do it is to complete an objective. If you have more than one, which decreases the danger level by 3 points. All right, so this is pretty interesting as a very kind of simple. I mean, this is the 1 page. I scroll down and it's just 1 page. Really simple. You're going to roll d6s. We don't know what the danger level of a dungeon starts at, or a location starts at, or maybe it's just for the whole adventure, perhaps. So we say it's 1. I don't know. Every time you fail something, if your failure is greater than the damage level, you're going. Or so first you raise the danger level. So you're going to fail. You're going to raise the danger level. So you go from 1 to 2. You would check. Hey, is my roll less than what is it? Is my roll greater than the danger level? Then I continue playing. And I think there's like an intriguing little element here, right? Because if you're starting off at 1, and I'm going to assume you're starting off at 1 for your adventure, then those first couple of levels of danger are not going to affect you at all, because at least the first 2. So you start off at 1, start off at 2, until you get to 3, you can't fail the roll and also fail. You can't fail the roll and fail the danger level because the numbers are overlapping too much. But then you're going to get to that 4, 5, or 6 when it's going to become really tight. you need to really watch out for. And then what do you need to do? This is going to drive you to completing your objectives. I feel like this is a bit of a kind of a roguelike sort of thing, where you're really going to be kind of at the edge of your seats, especially if these levels are going up and down for the whole party. So it's not just, hey, if I fail, my personal danger level goes up. No, if anybody fails, their danger level goes up. Hey, Marcello, nice to see you. So it's a real kind of tug. I think the thing I would want if I play here is, as a player, I'd want to go, I need to be able to mitigate rolls a lot, because any roll, you only have 5 fails before we're gonna fail, right? Unless our luck is amazing. And maybe I would put my high roll in luck. Throw the 4 in luck, and then through one of those 3 or 2 and just live with it, because that luck roll seems to be super important. I want to know how much of this I can mitigate, either just fictional positioning, or can I get assists from other players on rolls? Like, what can I do? And then having those objectives, because I think that danger level can ramp up quickly, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but you're going to want to almost race towards objectives, because you don't want to fail a bunch of rolls. Special items. Roll, choose, or create one. You don't roll when using one of these. They have one use, though. Ooh. So you can use these to give yourself a freebie, basically. You can get a lucky coin, night vision goggles with low batteries, a rusty knife, some brittle lockpicks, a rotten rope, a smoke bomb. That's kind of cool. So if you're playing in a party of 3 or 4, you're going to have basically 4 of these things that you can call upon at some moment to get a free pass, which I like. It's a way of mitigating that danger level, because if you don't roll dice, you don't have to up the danger level. And now we have a table for objectives. Choose one or more if you want to make the session longer and more difficult. Steal an esoteric item, steal important documents, rescue a friend of yours, kidnap the ruler of the place, map out the entire place, find a hidden entrance to an unknown place. And then scenario, you could choose or create one. A noble castle, a tower of wizards, and assassins. Ooh, I think they spelled assassins wrong. I think you're missing an S there. An Assassin's Guild hideout, a maximum security prison, Area 51, or a haunted mine. So, of course, if you pick those, it seems like, I think the idea with this feels like it would be a very quick-moving game, theater of the mind. It's a five-room dungeon technique, I think, would work really well with this. We're not really, I think for this kind of game, and given everything, and it's certainly the danger levels and how with the rolls we're making, we're not, I feel like I would be comfortable in not having them literally map out an entire place, but have these different areas that maybe have different sorts of challenges in them, and then just concentrate on the fiction and the challenges and the things that come up with however they're doing the challenges, and whether they're succeeding or failing, and consequences of that, and moving on that way, as opposed to, okay, let me go find a map of a castle to use. That would be my take. All right, so the game was by Angelo Laviola, as we mentioned. The translator was Ezequiel Merodo, and the graphic design by Lucas Zavala. And with special thanks to Tomas Cano, Javier Lorenzo Ayala. Good job. This is a pay what you want on itch. So if that sounded cool to you, please reward the creator by paying them, giving them a little something. I will add Thieves to my collection of RPG stuffs. And you can get it as an image. I'm not sure why you'd want to, but you can get it as an image. Did I give it a thumbs up? I did. Back to OSR subreddits. Okay. All right. I wrote a blog post about my experience running OD&D White Box. I always forget what the FMAG means. For 40 sessions in more than a year. This, I think, will be worth reading. Give an upvote. Let me go into the comments. So, let's see what they're saying. All right, this is posted to the It's Always Sunny in Castle Greyhawk blog. All right, I was going to say, who is this? The About Me just has a picture of Winona Ryder and some Morse code. So to say at the end, who wrote this? Oh, you know what? At least this one. Nope, it doesn't. All right, so this is posted at by It's Always Sunny in Castle Greyhawk. I'm glad I got this at the basically 30-minute mark. James Thrall says, "Oh, fantastic medieval adventure game. Thank you." I can never keep that straight. I see FMAG and I don't know. My mind just goes. I don't. It just doesn't. I don't know. It just never clicks for me. Okay. White Box Campaign State of Play, once again from the It's Always Sunny in Castle Greyhawk blog, posted on the 20th. The Dave says hello. Hello, Dave. Or the Dave. I've been running a weekly White Box Fantastic Medieval Adventure game since November 1st, 2020. And it's funny because I had to see the FMAG, and even though I literally just said it, I had to look and find James's comment to recall what it is. I don't know what is those 4 letters. It's like my weakness. It's like the knights who say knee. I'm like the guy that reads FMAG. Last Sunday, I ran the 40th session of the campaign, and in commemoration, I've decided to write a post about the things I've learned and noticed while running it. You know what? One other thing I'll do is I'll raise up the. Can I raise up the font size a bit? There we go. First of all, we try to play. First of all, we try to play every Sunday at the same time every week, but occasionally we've gone several weeks without playing because one of the players' work schedules. Setting a fixed time and day of the week to play, Sundays at 7 p.m. in our case, has been essential for the campaign surviving as long as it has. I can't really recommend it enough. The core group at my table consists of only 3 regular players plus me, the DM. The vast majority of sessions, it's only been the 4 of us playing, but 4 other people have joined the game for a couple of sessions on a few separate occasions. All of the players are in real life friends of mine, or friends/partners of friends of mine. Due to the nature and limitations of online play, I found just 3 players plus 1 DM to be the ideal amount of players for online games. We play on Discord with voice and video on, and use a bot called Roll'em to handle the dice rolls. We don't use a VTT or any of that other fancy stuff, mostly because we've never felt like we needed them, but also because we're too lazy to figure out how it works. Before we switched to Discord, we were even more primitive. We played on Zoom and used rolldicewithfriends.com for dice rolls, but Zoom kept kicking us out every 40 minutes, and I eventually convinced the rest of the players to get Discord accounts. All this to show that you don't need much to play D&D online. And just to pause here for a moment, this is almost entirely the exact setup that I am using, and I don't have experience running currently with more than the 3 players plus me, but I will say that I think the games run just fine with the 3 players plus me, working really well. And I use the exact same setup as they have come to. I use Discord. I do not use Roll'em. I use Dice Maiden. But other than that, I do the same things as that. Let's see, can I use? There we go. The average party size is usually just 3 PCs plus 4 or 5 hirelings, with each player being in complete control of at least 1 hireling in addition to their PC. Given the small party size and the fact that I started them out at level 1, making hirelings cheap, plentiful, and fully controllable by the players was pretty much indispensable for them to have any success. The current adventuring party consists of Yugur de Midden Guragcha, 4th level magic user, and I apologize to the It's Always Sunny Greyhawk blog and their players for the butchery that's going to happen to these character names. Snet, 4th level chaotic cleric of Ultrazoa, the god of all wild beasts, and Betty Davis, 3rd level fighter. And their 3 hirelings, Murray, Virginia, and Paulino, all of them 1d6 HP, 0 level commoners. The one thing I don't do with my party, though this setup again is very familiar to me because I'm also running 3 PCs, and they also have about 4 or 5 hirelings. I control all the hirelings. I demand that my players give them orders to make them go. I like that for me, but there's certainly nothing wrong with giving players control. I just don't happen to do that. With the exception of Snet, who's basically a sentient colony of rats in a trench coat, all the PCs and hirelings so far have been human because I wanted to keep the setting humanocentric and somewhat low magic, so I didn't allow players to make elf, dwarf, or halfling PCs. Snet is so weird because he rolled 3 7s for his stats during character creation, and I thought I would let him roll to get a random mutation as a consolation prize. That's pretty cool. That's a neat idea. I like that in terms of, instead of saying to someone with low stats, either, oh, like, you suck, roll again, or, sorry, tough luck, you give them a little something. They still got low stats, but now they got maybe a little a little edge to them. Though maybe being a bunch of rats in a trench coat is as much its own inconvenience as it is, bonus. But it's a nice feature. Certainly sets them apart from the other PCs. The PCs have spent most of their time exploring a single tentpole dungeon, in quotes, Bugbear Castle, that I've been cludging together between sessions. But a couple of sessions were dedicated to doing other stuff unrelated to the dungeon. One particularly memorable side trick consisted of the PCs hunting down and massacring a company of brigands they had been fighting on and off for the entire campaign. The very first session, the PCs waited outside the castle and ambushed a small detachment of said brigands when they came out, killing them and stealing the treasure they had retrieved from the dungeon. That's clever. Anyways, Bugbear Castle started off as an attempt to make my own Castle Greyhawk or Castle Blackmoor and run a campaign centered around it. It began as a single level with around 34 rooms inspired by a reskin of B3 Palace of the Silver Princess that Gus from Dungeon of Signs did. The main enemies were different kinds of goblinoids, animated furniture, and miscellaneous skeletons and sturges. As the PCs explored it, I slowly started adding more rooms to it, and eventually added a small cellar level under the original castle to bring the total number of rooms up to 79. Once my players were almost done exploring that cellar level, I realized I wanted to keep expanding the dungeon, but I was too lazy to write an entire new level myself. So I just grabbed the Hyquius Vaults and half-assedly grafted it to the bottom of my Franken dungeon without thinking about it too much. The PCs are currently exploring this level. I plan to do this again with Diogo Nogueira's Halls of the Blood King and more unrelated modules when the time comes. I referred to it as a mega dungeon before, but to be honest, it's still quite small in comparison to, say, Stonehell. Maybe one day it would be big enough to deserve being called a mega dungeon, but right now I'm happy just calling it my humble tentpole dungeon. And the Dave agrees with me that low stat bonus thing is kind of cool. Yep, I agree. The setting is fairly standard, vanilla-ish D&D. The main inspiration was Wayne Rossi's posts on the implied setting of OD&D. It's a points of lighty, mountainous, pseudo-medieval, pseudo-European region with a few town baronies, fortresses, and ruins scattered here and there. The wilderness is full of bears, brigands, and werewolves. The towns are inhabited by grubby bumpkins and scoundrels who spit on the ground compulsively. That's a nice touch. The temple dungeon literally just fell from the sky near the starting town a couple of days before the campaign started, and the game began with me telling the players, "You've heard rumors that the castle that fell from the sky is full of monsters and treasure. You want that treasure." Bam! Look at that. Open right there. There's something new that's been opened up, or in this case, fallen from the sky. It's full of stuff. Treasure in particular. You want that stuff. Go get it. Begin game. The campaign has been pretty easy to run. Most weeks I do less than 20 minutes of prep for the next session. I mostly just keep a record of changes in the dungeon and sometimes track the development of town happenings. This is a success in my eyes. One of my priorities when I started playing this campaign was to run something as simple and effortless as possible. Over-preparing stuff has burned me out in the past, and I can happily say that I don't really see myself burning out on this campaign anytime soon. The main thing that has helped me keep the campaign simple has been focusing on a small region. So far, the PCs have only, very briefly, visited another settlement besides the starting town. NPCs sometimes mention other towns and cities, but so far the party hasn't had any reason or motivation to travel to them. This is fine, though, because I want to keep the campaign low prep, simple, and focused on the tentpole dungeon. Every now and then, the PCs go to visit the magic user's teacher to trade magic items for spells and consult him about stuff. But other than that, they just travel between the starting town and the dungeon. So my party doesn't have a singular dungeon that they've been messing with, though I have kind of a similar, I don't want to say it hasn't really been the tentpole dungeon per se, but the kind of dungeon that I put right next to town is like, start here, and they did start there, and then they've moved around, but I've also kept it in a very small region, which has helped because once you've kind of prepped that small region, you don't have to keep going back and re-prepping it for each game. It's already there, and then I can either spend time prepping more outside, or just think about, like he's saying, the kind of state of changes between different factions, different major players, the party, the monsters, all that kind of stuff. Hey, Ironcaster. Thanks for hanging out. Happy Thursday to you as well. As for the play, most sessions the PCs just spend a while planning their next expedition, go to the dungeon, explore a couple of rooms, and then return to town to sell their loot. Some days they've spent up to 1.5 hours just in the planning process, wandering around town trying to recruit hirelings, visiting carpenters and blacksmiths to commission expensive contraptions, and coming up with theories about stuff they've seen in the dungeon. The dungeoneering has been very fun, tense, and exciting most of the time. The PCs have killed a ton of goblinoids, undead, and other miscellaneous monsters, and a bunch of PCs and hirelings have gotten killed too. See the end of this post for the ongoing Roll of the Dead. Some noteworthy things I've noticed are that already at 3rd level, PCs start feeling much less fragile and much more capable, so they start getting a bit more careless about combat and traps. Sleep, Turn Undead, Light, and Heavy Armor are the MVPs of the campaign, and Dungeon Rivers are extremely dangerous. Most PCs and hireling deaths owe themselves to bad luck, i.e. getting one-shotted by critical hits, or bad judgment, i.e. one player charging a group of enemies alone while the rest of the party just watches. I think I've seen a lot. That's probably the number one source of death I've seen in all the campaigns I've played in. Is the one person running into some kind of combat and either not waiting to consult with the party, not caring, or the party, whatever, not deciding or not waiting for the decision of everyone going, yeah, we're all going in, and they sprint ahead, and yeah, they get buried. Let's see. Okay, they have decreased over time as the players have learned to stick together and support each other during fights. The biggest takeaway when it comes to tactics is that the party should always either fight together or run away together. Lack of coordination kills. Man, ain't that the truth. Lately, I've been thinking that I would like to give Magic users more ways to find new spells since they don't get any new ones by just leveling up. Something I've thought about is spreading rumors of a certain valley or swamp littered with the tombs of dead spellcasters generated with the tables from Bower Maze. Currently, the Magic user occasionally finds the odd scroll or bundle of spellbook pages in the dungeon, or trades magic items in exchange for spells with the wizard that taught him magic. But having a specific location where you can go and know for certain that there's a big chance that you'll find new spells seems like a good idea to me. Obviously, looking for spells in these mountain tombs would also be dangerous and challenging. Alternatively, I could try to come up with more ways to learn or obtain spells inside the Temple Dungeon, or maybe in town. Hunting other Magic user NPCs for their spells is a classic and something I would also like to incentivize. One thing I also do, because I have the same similar situation, is when the players go to level up, I have them go through training to level up, so they take a little downtime, they go to the trainer, and the trainer for the classes that have arcane spellcasting will teach them a spell or two. It's not necessarily what they want, because I will roll kind of, what spells do they have, or what spells are they willing to teach. So you're not necessarily getting your choice, but you will generally get a spell or two. Then you can use other means to kind of either, like they're talking about, finding a new source where you can maybe get a bunch of spells, or doing the research, checking for rumors to see whether there's somebody out there with the spell that you want. Pete Giant, hey, thanks for joining, Pete Giant. I've also been using spells as particular instantiations of a spell species, taking inspiration from this Goblin Punch post. Too lazy, don't read. Didn't read. Each spell is an individual specimen of a certain species, but you can potentially have multiple specimens of each species in your spellbook. This solves the problem of Magic users only ever using their one or two strongest spells repeatedly, but also leave space for them to have multiple copies of Sleep or Magic Missile or whatever if they can obtain them. That's interesting. I may have to go back and check out that post. I don't know if I want my magic spells as a spell species, but could be cool. That's pretty much it. It has been a fun campaign so far, and I'm looking forward to keep running it. I'll probably write more about it in a few months. And now, last but not least, a list of all the PCs and hirelings that have died thus far. Funnily enough, I think it does a pretty good job of capturing some of the more memorable encounters and occurrences that have come to pass. Alright, I'm just going to read the causes of death. The names of classes almost don't matter that much. The first one to fall was stabbed by goblins. Another one was devoured by a mountain dragon. One was carried off by a mountain dragon, probably the same encounter. Disemboweled by a hypno peacock. Gorman dies by a carnivorous cottage. Oh, that's some kind of mimic thing. Ripped apart by a cloth dragon. Shot by a goblin, but heroically saved the party's lantern. Crushed by an avalanche of bones. Another one crushed by an avalanche of bones. Killed by orcs. Oh my gosh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Slain by brigands. Someone flattened by an animated cupboard. Trampled by a stampede of animated chairs. Well, he did say that their dungeon was a lot of animated furniture, and that furniture is dangerous. Ooh, suffocated by a crawling fume. Oh, I'm stealing that one. Crawling fume. You are coming to my game. Sorry, my players, but prepare yourselves for a crawling fume. Head ripped off by a skeleton, consumed by a vermin grotesquerie, eaten by bears, also eaten by bears. Whoa, assassinated on the PC's orders. Then the poor carpenter also assassinated on the PC's orders. And then 2 of them drowned by vodjanois. I don't know what a vodjanoi is. Is there a definition for vodjanoi? But, I'm using my trackpad today, and I hate it. I hate it with a passion. Is that something vodjanoi? Nope, nothing. All right, cool. Very fun article. The Dave says, I love the idea that instead of a magic missile doing 1d4 plus 1 per level, it might do 1d6 or a constant 3 damage because you learn the spell differently. That would take a lot of GM work, though. Yeah, I think at that case, I might have different names. So you might have, like, Dave's magic missiles that does 1d6, and then Pete's magic missiles do just a flat 3, then something else. Or I would probably vary the names more than that. And maybe, in the description, hey, this is a variant of the now lost original magic missile spell, and people are making their own. But yeah, it is cool, but yeah, it takes a lot of work. Pete Giant asks, how do you feel about magic systems that require a PC to roll to save after casting to see if they remember how to cast it again that day? I don't have a problem with it, but I'd want some kind of... So I always like to look at these systems, or these kind of mechanics, and I try to ask myself this question, okay, what am I getting, and then what am I giving up? And I want to look at that from the player's perspective as well. So if I'm going to say, okay, hey, you magic user, now to cast the spell, which you only have very few, you got your 1 magic missile in the day, not only am I going to have you roll to cast it, but now I'm going to roll to see if something else... Well, I guess in the sense of, like, you have your 1 spell, and now you're going to roll to see if you forget it. Well, if it's clearly in the default system of you use up your spell slot anyway, that doesn't make any sense. So I'm presuming that maybe you keep your spell, and then you have some kind of maybe escalating save to forget it. So you might get to cast 8 magic missile spells in one time, and the other day 1. That's that kind of give or take in this example, I'm presuming, right? So you can cast a bunch, but you might not cast any, or you might only cast 1 if you miss your save. I'm okay with that, because as a player, as a GM and the player both, I'm thinking, okay, they're going to have some variability. They may get on a lucky roll, and they're going to be able to boom, boom, cast a bunch of magic missiles. The downside is they might not cast any. That seems to be a fair trade-off. I might mess with it more. Maybe I would say, well, maybe you'll just lose your spell casting. So you're going to get to, any of your spells, you're going to be able to throw them all out there, but instead of having to track individual spells that you've forgotten, I might just say, you've burnt out your mana for the day, and you've got to sunbathe and soak up mana from the sun or something to get it back right. But whatever system that is, I'm fine. I don't like it so much when you're just throwing it in front of the players, and there's not, it's not giving you anything from a thematic, or it has no meaning in the fiction. There's nothing potentially, it has no potential meaning in there, and then you're not really giving anything back on the other side. You're just kind of putting your hand on the scale of difficulty, let's say. I'm not as much a fan of it, but there's always mitigating factors and whatnot. But that's kind of how I look at it. So in that case, assuming that they're getting more castings than they would normally, but then there's that chance that they're going to oops and lose it, I'm okay. That feels okay to me. Lil Terminated says, Living Spells reminds me of the Magic and Magical Industrial Revolution. I think that I have not read. Right, I think I got you, Pete the Giant. Yeah, you don't have to roll the cast just to see if you remember to cast again. Yeah, I think given that, like I said, given the vanilla system where you're only going to get 1 casting anyway, that seems to be pretty good. I would probably want to make sure that the save isn't something that is whatever. I mean, I guess if you're using your regular saves, they're not dependent on your attributes. They're dependent on your class level, which to me is what I would want to keep it as. I wouldn't want it to be roll under your intelligence or roll under something else for that kind of save. I would just have it be save versus magic or whatever, save versus, wands, whatever, and spells, and then go that route with it. But it seems fine. Seems good to me. I mean, I like that stuff. I'm really behind the idea. I've done this in my game, and I'm really behind systems that do away with the slots, but have other methods of kind of keeping magic in check. Not necessarily free cantrips and all that stuff, but just different ways of doing magic that maybe have a different kind of tracking, maybe easier, just different, but then don't have the kind of, because slots is just kind of it's just really artificial and meta. And if you could have something else that fits the fiction a little bit better, whether it's you've burnt yourself out of mana, you can't, whatever thing inside of you were using to access the magic of the planes has fried out for right now, and it has to heal, or you become overtired, or things like that. I really appreciate. So I'm down with that. I'm down with it. All right, that was cool blog post from It's Always Sunny in Castle Greyhawk. I already upvoted it. Excellent. Where are we at on time? Oh, look at that. So for probably the first time forever, I got the long blog post out of the way. Like the Eye of Arendor rituals. I don't know the Eye of Arendor. Is that something? What's that from, James Thrall? James Thrall, not Thrall. James Thrall, the undead version of James Thrall. Pete Giant says, my thought is it can produce a magic user getting used to spamming the same spell. So what I do in my game, Pete Giant, is I have, I call them hero dice. It's probably a lame word, but basically they have a dice pool. And they can take as many dice as they want to try to test something. So in the case of a magic user, if they were to cast a first level spell, I believe it's 7 plus the number of the spell. So you'd have to roll 8 or above to cast a first level spell. Now they have this pool of dice, which I think at first level starts off as, I think they have 5, and they're at second level now, so I think they have 6 or 7. And they can choose how many dice. So they can choose, if they want to try just 2 dice and take their chances with it being a little bit under 50%, they can. If they want to, if they really need to do it and they want to roll 2, 3, 4, all their dice, they can. In terms of spells, if they roll 5s or 6s, they lose them out of the pool until they take a long rest. So they're rolling dice. You can get lucky, and I roll a 4 and a 4, so great. I've rolled 8, and I didn't trigger losing any dice. So, hey, I can just keep doing that, right? But, of course, if you're only rolling 2 dice, there's still a pretty good chance you're going to fail a lot. And if you roll the more dice you roll, the more chances you're going to roll 5s and 6s, which, of course, rolling a 5 or 6 just on 1 die is a 30% chance. So, what I do is your hero dice for my players' characters, is that they apply to everything. So my magic user, it's not just that pool of dice for their spells. If they get knocked to 0, how many hero dice they have in their reserve gives them a buffer to stay alive. If they want to do other things, like they can use a die to get advantage. They can spend a die to get advantage on a die roll. So if they were hit by something and they need to make a save, and they know if they fail that save, they're going to die, they can say, okay, I'm going to spend one of my dice to get advantage on this roll. Or, man, we're not going to make another round with this creature, so I'm going to spend a die to get advantage on either the attack roll or the damage roll or both. So they have these dice they can use, and in the spellcaster's case, they can cast any spell in their arsenal, but they got to risk dice. And because these dice are used across the game, they have reasons to not necessarily want to blow all their dice on rolling a bunch of spells. So sure, they could go and just bam, bam, I'm going to spend 4 dice, woo, 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 but then they're out of dice. Recall, to cast a first level spell, you have to roll an 8, so you can't possibly get there on 1 die. So you get down to 1 die, there's not much you can do, but just kind of hold it anyway, or you could spend it on advantage kind of thing, but that's it. So they have, I have mitigating circumstances in there in which you might want to spend it, but you're also thinking, ooh, it'd be nice to have that if I feel like we're going to get in combat, and I'd like to be able to not die at 0, or I want to hold this. So they've tended to balance that out. So that's how I do it. So having these pools that are used, and the different characters and their special abilities also all draw from the same pool. So everybody has similar mechanics. Sometimes they work a little bit differently, but in general, everyone's got a fixed pool of dice, and they have different things that pull from the pool in different ways. So they all have kind of different things to do, but they're all cognizant of these pools do a lot of different things, and because they do that, maybe I don't want to use them all just for casting spells. I want to do something else. So that's kind of how I've dealt with that problem. I think any kind of system where you're going to kind of give your magic users or give anybody kind of the go signal to be able to potentially get lucky and continue to do stuff, you're going to have that issue where there's always going to be the potential that someone's just going to get on a massive run and just be able to, I cast lightning bolt, and not get burned. Hey, that's fine, but the house always wins, so to speak, right? You were the casino house. The more those rolling those dice over time, the more they're bound to get the results that you want. So if there's a particular game night or stretch of a game night in which they're just on that roll, hey, you live with it, and then you get to laugh maniacally when at the worst possible moment it all goes bad for them, right? Let's see. Pete Giant, I don't say I want to put the in his name. Pete Giant says maybe only a save to remember spells less than the PC's level. Could be. Casting spells at the PC's level once per day. Yeah, I mean, like I said, Pete, there's a bunch of ways you can do it and kind of works for you. I've enjoyed the dice pool thing. Maybe I'll write it up at some point and throw it out there. I feel like it's worked pretty well for my game. And I've said this a million times. I'm a super big fan of kind of risk reward stuff. I like that kind of thought of coming up to the sort of the roulette wheel, so to speak, and or the craps and letting it roll. And then because you can add, in my case, you can add more dice in if you want to. You can, to a certain extent, kind of mitigate things in your favor as much as you can. You can't ever be sure because you could throw you need an 8 and you decide to roll 7 dice and the odds are terrible, but you could roll 7 ones and still lose. But the way I look at it is, well, at least in that case, rolling 7 ones, you have failed pretty awful, but you don't lose any of those dice if it were casting a spell, because you only lose the dice if you do well. So when you're rolling, say, 2 dice to do something, you're kind of almost asking for losing your dice to get the roll, because if you need to get a 9, let's say, and you're rolling 2 dice, you're going to need to roll a 6 or a 5 or a 6, most likely, right? So you're kind of living with that, or you can roll a bunch of dice, hope you all roll low, and then get all the dice. But I like all that. I like all that kind of stuff. The Dave says that is part of the fun of exploding dice. The chains are exhilarating. Absolutely. Yeah, Pete Giant, take a look at dice pools. I mean, it's they're used a bunch of different ways in a bunch of different games. This one I came up with, my inspiration was the cleric turning table, using 2d6 and kind of having the level of the person doing something versus the level of the thing they're trying to do. And then I just kind of ended up sort of tweaking it. And I thought, well, what if you could add more dice? And I just like the idea of having these kind of these pools that regenerate. And then I just started working different systems into. So I just started thinking about it. Well, we have this resource and that I have now, and I at first it was just for player character abilities, and I thought, well, let's add some different things. Let's give people different things. Let's allow them to use them in multiple different ways. So maybe at a game night, you might not be using much of your dice, and maybe you think like, well, this was a waste. But then an ogre with a club just hammers you, and then the fact that you're all 7 of your dice means that when that ogre knocked you all the way to -3 or 4, you were still alive, or you were still, you're dying, but you're not dead. And so then suddenly you feel like, oh, thank goodness I had those dice in reserve. That's my story. All right, let's look at this as our last thingamajigam here. Let's take a look at this fighter optional class rule. Give it enough vote. Fighter optional class rule submitted by Monster Hunter Banjo. I have a relatively simple idea that I've been toying around with to boost the fighter a little bit, or rather to make its specialty, i.e. fighting, work slightly different from other classes other than having a different THAC0 progression. When a fighter attacks, they roll 1d20 plus the damage die for the weapon, add the 2 dice together for their hit roll total. I generally like this because it adds a little more hits for the fighter overall, and it also kind of represents that a well-aimed hit that would cause more damage is also more likely to hit, where a glancing hit will be less likely to hit. So I guess my question for Monster Hunter Banjo is the damage die in addition to their level, essentially? It's, assuming the fighters get something like a +1 for every level. So I don't know if it's exactly true, but just as a shorthand, we'll just say level 1 fighters +1, a level 10 fighters +10. This certainly, I mean, I don't know if I would do this myself. The one thing I've thought about was basically you would roll a d20. So I don't want to immediately sidetrack into my own homebrew that I haven't really done. I've been pondering in my brain, but haven't activated, have not tested it yet. So kind of, half-assed homebrew was to have the roll the roll d20, add your level for a fighter, add your whatever your plus bonus is, add your damage all in one roll. And then you would compare that to the target, which would be, whatever their armor class is, and whatever the margin you surpass their armor class is was the damage you did. So, for example, if they were whatever armor class 2, so you had to roll an 18 or above to hit, and don't at me if I got the conversion wrong. Let's just say whatever it is, they're armor class 18 to hit. You are wielding a great sword, so let's just say it's whatever D10, and then you're a third level fighter. So you roll a 15 for your to hit, plus 3, 18, plus 5 damage, 23. They were at 18, 18, 23 minus 18 is, well, it ends up being 5. So in that case, it all works out. But let's say they were armor class 0 and they were 20, it would only do 3 damage, something like that. And that way, you would kind of get in. So if you had I think that the idea I liked about it is if you had a really heavy weapon and you got a 10, if I rolled a 10 on that great sword, sure, if I had scored enough to hit without it, I would do a boatload of damage. But it would almost reflect that if I'd only rolled a 10 to hit, but I rolled a 10 damage, then some of that would still come through. Like I just swung it so hard that even that, I like to talk about AC is it's not just your armor, it's your dodginess. You can get hit, whatever. That like even that's just like that glancing blow. Like that great sword came through, and even though you ducked out of most of it, you still got nicked a bit because it was enough. That was my idea. This idea, it's okay. I feel like it's not going far enough. I would rather like really push it and change it for everybody, but then give the fighter something else and just let that be your system. And why just fighters? Let's see. There's a bunch of comments in here about the chat. Let's see. Oh, I see. Okay, I'll get back to the dice pool after we finish with this, assuming there is more. Let's see. Pete Giant says, I like if the foe's hit dice is less than the level of the PC. Any extra damage spills over to a foe within range. If a foe is killed, the PC may attack once again. Yeah, that stuff is cool. I like all those things for fighters, like that kind of. I forget the names. They had 3rd edition for those feats. There was like sweep attack, and I don't know. I do like those kinds of things. Ian says they read this one earlier. They've really been trying to find different ways to differentiate and enhance the BX fighter without locking away options. If a fighter can push, does that mean a thief can't? Spencer asked if they're using variable weapon damage. That's a good idea. Yeah, those are interesting things in here. I don't have, like my players in my kind of homebrew, my sort of modified BX game kind of none of them are running just vanilla fighters. They're all running kind of different flavors of things. So I haven't had to deal with if someone were playing just a flat out fighter. I would definitely, one of the things I liked from Lamentations of the Flame Princess was no class got hit bonuses over the original one. So if you were whatever you were outside of a fighter, you got a flat, I think, +1 to hit, and that's all you got. And only fighters got increased to hit bonuses, which I think is really, really nice. And I like it because one, it really highlights the fighter. When you get to be like a 4th, 5th, whatever level fighter, I mean, you were at a serious advantage in combat with versus other party members who don't have that. It also forces you, if you're one of those other player classes, if your character is another player class, to really start to lean in on what your class does well. If you get a few levels in as a magic user, you're no better at whacking things with your staff than you were when you just left the farm. But of course, you're a magic user, so should you even be really worrying about getting better at things with the staff? No, you should be worried about getting better with spells. And this kind of pushes you to be like, okay, you're not getting any progression right there. You better get better at casting spells. And if you're going to get equipment, whatever, don't look for, I want the staff +2 of hitting because it's just diminishing returns. Figure out how you can get that staff of fireball storing, things like that. So, and the same thing for thieves. You better be getting into backstab because other than that, you are not getting any better. And I kind of like that. I don't think all these guys should just be getting better at combat. I have no problem with that being kind of a fighter thing. And you could probably make an argument that maybe dwarves and get at the short end of the stick, or maybe elves to a certain degree, since they're supposed to be in vanilla, whatever. They're kind of fighters plus, but they have some other things to lean on to. And I think Lamentations, they're kind of trying to dissuade you from playing elves and dwarves anyway, because I think they're going for a more humanocentric kind of sort of setting in implied setting. So I like that a lot, and I like giving them a lot of the shoves and pulls. I had a document written up, which I should probably go find again, that gave fighters all kinds of maneuvers that they could do also, and everybody could do them. If fighters got more, like if you, let's say, to do power attack, someone else had to do like -4 to get the +2. Fighters could do -2 for +2, right? So I made all these maneuvers, and I said, okay, everybody can do them, but and everyone doing them, they could do them, but they were a lot less efficient. They had whatever, there was normal efficiency, and the fighters got an enhanced efficiency. And so that was my way of saying, yeah, everybody can do it, but fighters are going to be better. And I thought it worked okay when I used it. I haven't deployed it in my latest game because I have to find it again. All right, some more comments. Hey, Brian Smith. Yep, you did come late, but that's okay. Oh, yes, and Null Terminator corrected me right. It was Cleave. And Mighty Cleave. The Dave says, so in AD&D they came out with the Thief class and implied that only a thief could climb and pick pockets, which I feel was a huge detriment to the system. Yeah, I think that was then the way they positioned the thieves from Greyhawk and also into AD&D, the Greyhawk supplement, I should say, for the white box, and then for AD&D, it was a mistake because it did, as you say, kind of imply that only thieves could do these things, which I know was not their intention. They did try, I think the naming was supposed to try to help with that. Hey, climb sheer surfaces. No, that's something the fighter can't do. Hide in shadows. No, that's something that only the thief can do. But that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that the fighter can't climb a brick wall. They just can't climb something sheer. That doesn't mean that the fighter can't hide behind a column. They just can't hide in the shadow cast by the column. But it was very easy to look at those names and just think of them as just being kind of highfalutin, fluffy language, and not really concentrate on what I think was an important point there was that language was more literal than just trying to be kind of metaphorical, whatever, right? So I think it was never really explained. I don't think anywhere in those older editions did they really just lay out what they meant. So it was one of those things that also you had to rely on what table you're at. Is your DM going to be expansive with how they're reading of it, or very narrow with the reading of it? And yeah, if you're not a thief, how much are they reading into it? Lamentations, again, did a nice thing where they just put it back to everything in D6s, and then if you were a specialist, you could add more D6s, but everyone else kind of still had that D6 chance to do something. In other games, I'm sure have approached it in other ways to kind of fix it. Ian says, right now I'm allowing the fighter types to attack HD times up to 4. Level 5 fighter can attack 2 HD monsters twice in a turn. That's cool. I like that too. Yeah, I have that for like the 4th level fighters, that once you reach hero level, that you can attack kind of your sort of sub 1 HD minion types multiple times, and just kind of, or I forget if I mean there's a couple ways to do it. One is just have them do just X amount of damage. I want to say that someone said that Gygax himself was running it, that say if you were a 7-level fighter and there were like 7 minions kind of things that are sub HD, you just killed 7 of them. Like you just wade into them and they just die, which would also work well. Or you get 7 attacks against sub things, and then I do like that as you get above that threshold starts to increase. But that's cool. Oh, Brian Smith says, what about Foo Fighters? Oh, don't do that. Where's Terrence? That's a Terrence line, Brian. Terrence isn't here to make that joke for himself. Spencer says, currently running a Lamentations game, and my fighter player loves this. Yep. I mean, it's one of those things that I think it doesn't please the Lamentations tweak, which is just, hey, only fighters increase their THAC0, nobody else does. It's kind of small. So I think a lot of people might look at that and say, well, you're really doing that by subtraction, right? You're really just taking away that advancement from everybody else and saying only fighters. But it makes a big deal. When your fighter's 3rd level and you're like, yeah, I'm +4 to hit, whatever, and else, like I'm still +1, so they're just swinging and missing at stuff, and you're cracking heads. You kind of feel fighterly. You feel it. So even though people, I think a lot of times want to give them something flashy, I think it's okay if fighters are kind of workmanlike, a workmanlike class. And they're going to get into it, and they're going to get down and dirty, and you're going to want them in there because they hit better than everything else. They wear the best armor, so they get not hit by the most stuff, and they're tanks, not in the MMO sense necessarily, but tanks in that they are they're the heavy hitters uh, of of the battlefield. And even if you're a wizard and you've got your fireball, like you may need time to cast that fireball, and who's keeping the things from coming in and just squishing you until you cast it? Them's your fighters, right? P. Giant says, I like all PCs being able to use every weapon. Thieves can only have max damage die is D6. Magic users max die damage being D4. Cleric is damage D4 if weapon sharp or piercing. Yeah, and fighters have no restrictions. Yeah, I don't mind that so much. Class based damage. I haven't played with that myself, but I've totally seen that done, and that works too. Ian says, "Youch, I'm late." Yep, you're late because I'm going to be closing up shop in a moment. And then Dave says, "Fighters are my favorite class to play because you are very open to play them how you want to play them." Yeah, and there's really no. I mean, maybe someone would argue there's a wrong way if you're not playing the heavily armored tank fighter, but yeah, you can go. You can go all kinds of ways with the fighter. Yep, and your arsenal is wide open, and it does depend a lot on your imagination because in a lot of games you don't have a ton of named maneuvers that you get to look at on your character sheet. But yeah, you can do whatever you want. We got two Ians now, so I think maybe I'll have to call Ian Wise and Ian B. I'm not sure. I'll have to figure it out. All right, folks. Well, we will end on this controversy of the two Ians and which Ian was late and which Ian said no such thing. I'm gonna call it a stream. Remember, I won't be streaming tomorrow. I will be off, but I'll be back next week, obviously. And if I'm lucky, fingers crossed, I'll get some stuff to talk about from PAX East. We shall see. In any case, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on. If you can give a thumbs up on your way out, that'll be awesome. If you're not subscribed and you feel like subscribing, that would also be awesome. Otherwise, have a great rest of whenever, everybody. Take it easy. Oh, I can call Ian Wise just Wise. All right. Well, we'll figure it out next time on OSR Reddit Roundup. I've been your host, Todd from Hex Press. Cheers, everybody.